The Red Sox lost Alex Bregman, but now they've responded. Welcome into an emergency edition of Fantasy Baseball today on Wednesday, January 14th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Chris Towers. The Red Sox are signing Ranger Suarez to a 5-year, $130 million deal. It looks like they are just leaning all the way into pitching this offseason. They still have enough moves where they can make trades and things could still happen, but the way that the team is currently constructed, it seems like they are going to lean on their pitching staff and hopefully just score enough runs throughout the course of the season. Ranger Suarez is 30 years old, has dealt with some recurring back injuries. He's still thrown 150-plus innings 2 years in a row, and he has been really good over the past 2 years. A 3.33 ERA, 121 whip, a little bit on the high end, 8.7 K per nine, all the ERA estimators below 3.7 during that time period. He is a quality pitcher. Chris, do you think his value changes at all in Boston, up or down?
Maybe slight downgrade because I don't know. No, probably not, right? Because it's a worse home park, although Philadelphia is not a great place to pitch. It's not a terrible one. Fenway is probably the second most hitter-friendly park in baseball, but it's a much better offense or defense behind him, right? Like the Red Sox, especially in the outfield, have a fantastic defense. They should be pretty good in the infield. We'll see. I think the infield is not quite settled yet, but I think value holds steady. We likely see his price increase from these early drafts just because now he's signed and there's no uncertainty. His early ADP is 180.8. That's great. I love that. I'll take him as the 180th player off the board every single time, but I would guess he moves up a little bit into like the 165, 170 range of drafts where you've got like Shodi Managa's right around 170, Robbie Ray, Gavin Williams, very different types of pitchers, but I think that 160 to 170 range is probably where Ranger Suarez floats up to.
Yeah, I agree with that. The ADP in January, you mentioned it, it's right around 180. He was going behind Shane Bieber and Trevor Rogers, Luis Castillo. All three of Scott, you, and me have Suarez at SP 49. We did not talk about this.
Yeah, what are the chances?
It's just we all landed on SP 49. And right now, I think he has been a really good value. I think that will probably tick up a little bit. But even with that, I think I would still be in on a Ranger Suarez. I don't think he has a ton of upside, but I think he's someone that should give pretty good ratios, and he goes deep into starts. So he should give you a chance at wins too.
The thing that's frustrating about Ranger Suarez is typically when we think of volatility among starting pitchers, it's a Gavin Williams type or an Edward Cabrera type. A fireballer with big strikeout upside, but big control and command questions who you don't quite know what you're going to get out of them. And Ranger Suarez is like the opposite of that as a pitcher, but he's been pretty volatile throughout his career anyway. And I think like it's not like injury prone, but it's brittle, I think would be the word I'd use, that he just... There tends to be something every year. You know, you said the back issues a couple times. I want to say he had like a hamstring injury one year that also derailed him, but it's always like there's these like 17 start stretches every year where Ranger Suarez looks amazing. And people want him to be ranked as a top 25 starting pitcher, and he pitches like that for a couple months at a time. He never quite sustains it. I think 2025 is the closest he's ever come where you didn't really have the big drop-off, but I do want to say that like while his price should rise, there's probably a hard ceiling on it, where if you get him outside of the top 150, you probably feel pretty good. If for some reason he ended up getting pushed up to like 130, that's where it's like, I think I'd rather take the gamble on other pitchers with more upside here.
Yeah, I think one of the low-key takeaways here is that Phillies fans won't be yelling at us about our rankings anymore, Chris, because there's always a stretch where Ranger Suarez looks amazing to start the season, or he just goes on a super dominant stretch, and then Phillies fans are yelling at us, why don't you have him ranked as your SP1? And, you know, I feel like we've finally come around. Like, we are ranking him higher than where his ADP is. So
he's really solid.
We are collectively in on Ranger Suarez. You mentioned the change in the venue. I think maybe it could be a good one for him. He's been better on the road in his career outside of Citizens Bank Park. So a 3.09 career ERA on the road, 3.68 at home. Fenway could be a tough place for left-handed pitchers. Obviously, you got the Green Monster there, but he's a ground ball pitcher, so I don't know that will matter too much for him. I would bring up the division, AL East, obviously very tough. You got the Orioles who are improving, the Blue Jays, obviously the Yankees.
NL East is pretty tough too, though.
But yeah, he's leaving the NL East where, he was facing the Mets and the Braves lineup. So, I think it's kind of I don't know that his value really changes all that much.
I think you can make a case for a slight upgrade, but probably not a big change in value here for Ranger Suarez. And, he's one of those pitchers where when he's on, it doesn't really matter. When he's commanding well, he is really, really hard to hit. He has, I want to say, the lowest hard hit rate among all pitchers over the past 2 seasons. He just does not give up a lot of hard contact. A lot of it's on the ground. And when he's on, he's really, really good. He's just not quite on as often as you'd like. But it's a 3.25 ERA over the past 5 seasons, I believe. It's hard to argue too much with the results that you get from Ranger Suarez at the end of the day, even if the process by which you get there is often a little frustrating.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we will discuss some of the fallout for this right after this quick break.
This isn't just combat. It's cinema.
Ready or not, here I come. Let's go!
Are you not entertained?
The new home of UFC, Paramount Plus.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball today. Again, the big news, Ranger Suarez to the Red Sox on a 5-year, $130 million deal. And that updated Red Sox rotation, you have Garrett Crochet and Suarez up at the top, followed by Sonny Gray and Brian Bayo. Now we are left with just one spot left in the rotation for one of Cutter Crawford, Patrick Sandoval, Johan Oviedo, Connolly Early, Peyton Tolley. Doesn't seem great for the pitching prospects here that we were hoping would get an opportunity in this Red Sox rotation. It still could happen, but I think they'll probably try the veterans first, and then if that doesn't work, maybe we get early in May, June, something like that.
Early? I would guess.
It needs to happen earlier.
Yes, I would guess Early and Tolley are back of the line now. And like you said, I don't know, maybe they go with a 6-man rotation. Lots of teams roll out 6-man rotations pretty regularly anyway. I wouldn't be surprised if the Red Sox were among them, especially with, Suarez has very rarely, has he ever gone 160 innings in a season?
I don't
know.
know.
Last year was a career high 157.1. So there's always something with him. Sonny Gray is older. Brian Bayo missed some time last year, I think, with a shoulder injury. Johan Oviedo had recovered from Tommy John. So there are ways for things to go wrong for the Red Sox. There are ways for every pitching staff to go wrong. And I would guess we see Connolly Early and Peyton Tolley at some point in 2026. And I would guess some point in the first half. Now, in Tolley's case, specifically, I think the likeliest outcome might be he is in someone else's rotation on opening day rather than in Boston's, just because that's a lot of pitching depth, and they invested $17 million in Patrick Sandoval over the past 2 seasons, and Cutter Crawford was really good 2 years ago, and I don't think they want to give up on him. And Brian Bayo is signed to a long-term extension, and Oviedo has some upside. So I just think one of those pitchers seems likely to get traded. The Red Sox have been rumored to be in on Nico Horner, on Brendan Donovan as well. So I would guess we see one of these pitchers moved in a deal by the Red Sox between now and opening day.
It always felt like it makes so much sense for Ketel Marte to wind up with the Red Sox.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like it's going to happen now. The D-backs seemingly have pulled Ketel Marte off the trade market. And we know the Red Sox were talking to them, but it was such a clear match, right? It was the D-backs were looking for pitching. Maybe the Red Sox didn't want to give up an earlier a Tolley in that deal for Marte or any of their young outfielders. But yeah, it's gone now, but it feels like it would have made a lot of sense for the Red Sox. What about the Phillies fallout here? We pretty much figured that Suarez would not be back with the team. They have their top 3 locked in: Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, and Aaron Nola. Roster Resource has Taijuan Walker and Andrew Painter in the rotation until Zach Wheeler is back. assuming he returns. We don't know when that's going to be. Chris, Painter is still young and a top prospect. He had a horrible 2025 coming back from Tommy John surgery, but it looks like he will have an opportunity with the Phillies to open the season, assuming that they don't actually bring in another starting pitcher. So Andrew Painter, let's see what he does in spring training, but could wind up being a decent sleeper this year.
I think Andrew Painter needs to be on any sleepers list. And now I say that having put out a sleepers list earlier this week that did not have Andrew Painter on it.
How could you?
He's giving me some Jackson Jobe vibes a year ago where people are weirdly cold on him, and in Jackson Jobe's case, there was a reason for it. And in Painter's case, there are real issues with what he was doing last season. He changed his mechanics in his return from Tommy John surgery, and it took a lot of the bite out of his fastball. The velocity was still good, but the movement profile and release point were much more normal. And it just did not play well. He struggled with his command. He struggled with missing bats in the way that we've seen from him in the past. Only a 24% strikeout rate last season across both levels. It was 39% in 2022, the last time we saw him. So I remain hopeful about Andrew Painter, and I'm glad he'll get the opportunity. And I hope, even if Zach Wheeler is ready relatively early on in the season, possibly by opening day, it's not a complete non-zero chance. I would hope Andrew Painter gets priority ahead of Taijuan Walker, who is in the last year of that $60-70 million deal they gave him. So there's not any long-term implications there for Taijuan Walker. I think in an ideal world, that's your swingman, and Andrew Painter's your number 5 starter. But if Painter goes out this spring and pitches like he did last season, I'm not sure Andrew Painter is at all guaranteed of a rotation spot. Because remember, we all thought Andrew Painter was going to be in this rotation by July of last season, and he was just never good enough to justify it. And it's entirely possible that happens again. He's still getting a lot of benefit of the doubt from prospect rankers. I think he's still viewed as a generally top 10-ish starting pitcher, but there's some distance from that between where he is now and where he was when he got hurt in 2023, when he was viewed as the consensus top pitching prospect in baseball. So Andrew Painter, like I said, cautiously hopeful, but certainly not optimistic at this point, I would say.
Yeah, very clearly a post-hype sleeper and just like the clearest definition of that phrase, but it's a little bit more complicated than that when you kind of peel back the layers on Andrew Painter. Again, the big news, Ranger Suarez to the Red Sox on a 5-year, $130 million deal. We are going to wrap there. For Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning into Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again tomorrow or sooner. Bye-bye.